Khor chamda gitu. Khor chamda. Kemudian wera cat kemudian ronganyi di kemudian delongkok Khor chamda gitu. Khor chamda Khor chamda gitu. Khor Khor chamda gitu. My name is Bher. I came from Southern Sudan in a small town called Makwach. My parents are from a Dinka tribe. The Dinka tradition is, I think, mainly in the summertime or any time, even in the winter when the weather is not that very cold. And the elder parents will call the kids. I remember one time being stopped from just playing, running around, and Grandpa called me that it's a storytelling time, and we all came and sat down around the fire, and they start telling the story about what happened years back ago. Until I was 6 years old, I was spending my days looking after our goats and playing around with the kids. Then, when I was 6 years old, my life totally changed forever. It's happened at night in the dark. I remember being in that hut with my whole family, my father and my mother, and my other 4 siblings. And I remember having kind of like a sweet dream in the middle of the night. Then I thought I had fire, but it was bullets. And I began to run in the darkness. I didn't know where I was going. I was just making sure that I'm running away from those bullets. I ran as fast and as far I could. And I waited in the forest there until the following morning. The next mornings, I ran into the crowd and I was able to locate only one of my brothers. We feared the rest of our family were dead. We could not go back because our hut was set on fire and everything was taken, and the decision was made by the elders to take us to Ethiopia. The journey to Ethiopia took us 1 month and it was 1,000 miles. So the decisions was also made by the leaders to make us walk at night. You cannot see what you were stepping on. And I remember 3 nights attack from an unknown wild animal, roaring and a child screaming, pull away into the dark by the wild animal. I don't know what to do. And on my mind, I was thinking maybe the next, maybe me, could be me. After we crossed the swamp areas, we went to this place. Water was another problem. It was a little desert. And somebody thought that there is a river that we can go and get some water in it. And when we reached into that river, it was a seasonal river and there was no water. It was dry. And we had only a spoonful of water to wet our tongue. We were in a point that we have no forward or going back. And we gathered to pray, for we agree that the prayers will be the only thing we can do now. So we gathered and we prayed. And in 45 minutes, I feel a cloud gathering from nowhere, and it rained on us until we were able to scoop waters. And some of us drink so much of water until they die from the water. From there, we finally made it to the Gilo River, the border of Sudan and Ethiopia. But we did not have canoes to cross it. We have to be carried by the elders to cross the river. In Ethiopia, it was about 6 months before we have any food in the camp. And when we asked the elders, they told us that they reported our case to the UN in Geneva. And our report, as soon as it came back from Geneva, is when we will get some food. And I didn't know where Geneva was by that time. We had nowhere to live. We were living under the trees, and a lot of diseases started breaking out. Dysentery, yellow fever, malaria, and some other disease that I couldn't even name. My days in Ethiopia in a camp, I was spending them looking for food. Each day we get out, the circle get wider and wider. And we were looking for leaves to boil for soup. And twice we were able to get a beehive, and it was very nice to have a honey to eat at that time. It was so sweet. It was so delicious. Later, the elders started teaching us under the trees about Latin and numbers. And it was the volunteer job. They don't have no books and we don't have any classes. So they just started thinking that education will be the best for us. I remember my first blackboard was a box from where the UNs were bringing food with. And it was just split into half and was nailed on the tree. And they were using charcoal to write on because we didn't have chalk by that time. So they have to use burnt charcoal from the wood to write on the board. And my first notebook was me writing letters and numbers on the ground with my hand. Four years later, we were forced at gunpoint to flee from Ethiopia back into Sudan. Now, after the several days of walking, we had to cross the Gilo River for the second time. We all gathered there and waited to cross the river. And the enemy started shooting on us. And everybody was forced to jump into the river. I was glad that I could swim. I dove into the water as deep as I could go. And I started coming out on the top of the water and swim on the bodies and the crocodiles in the river until I got to the other side and started running and running and running. Now, those of us who survived, we were brought into a small town in Sudan, and we were kept there for a while. And we had attacked. This is where some of the teachers, all of the teachers were trying to protect us. One teacher was trying to defend us. He commanded us to lay down, and he stood before the enemy with a stone and stick. He was killed. The teachers were always the first victim. Now the elders decided we should journey to Kenya for safety. It took us a year to get to Kenya, and we were constantly attacked because people believe that a child boy can become a soldier and an enemy. When we got into Kenya, and we have to start from zero in a refugee camp, there was only one doctor to take care of thousands of people. And many died before they could see him. The locals around the camp in Kenya had less than we had, but they had guns, and they want what we had. They would kill for proudness to show that they could. I stayed in Kenya for 9 years. Here my brother left me alone in the camp. I later learned that he became a soldier. Another boy, too soon, a soldier. Eventually we had schools, and that's when I learned English. The first word I learned in English was hello, and the first sentence I learned in English was how are you? I went from a boy to a man. I was now 21 years old, and the UN now is talking about bringing the orphan boys to US. I found my new home in Denver, Colorado. All this time, I didn't know anything about my home or my parents. One time, a friend in Colorado told me about Dinka tribe, which is my tribe, on the internet. It's come on the screen, a picture of my father. Later, I learned my father died and my mother is still alive. I was able to go back to see my mother after 20 years. When she first saw me, she grabbed me and she sang me a lullaby. And a lullaby goes like this. Kora chamdao, chamdao kutu, kora chamdao, chamdao, kora chamdao, chamdao kutu. Kedia nawara chat kedia naronga nyedi, kedia, kora chamdao, chamdao kutu, kora chamdao. That lullaby means Khor is my name that they give to me before I became Isaac. And that means a lion. She was telling me that I have been so brave. And she was very excited to see me back again after 20 years. When shall I see my home again? When When shall I see my beautiful land? I will never forget my home. My father is there, my mother is there, my brother is there, and sister is there. When shall I see my home again? When shall I see my beautiful land? I will never forget Sudan. Auntungi abande aviya takira lwal kubeni elerin bla tangani chal ay mariarin kakir tangani chal ay mariarin kakir anararo du marara kir lala anararo du manawakir lala anararo du yanya biyam tangin anararo du Auntungi abande aviya takira lwal kubeni elerin bla tangani chal anararo du marara kir lala anararo du manawakir lala anararo du yanya biyam tangin anararo du manawakir lala anyani chal panam ende biye dunen ka dwalu dash manari kaki ende biye dunen ka dwalu dash manari kaki anyani chal ende biye dunen ka dwalu dash manari kaki anyani chal